Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 31. Hello once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Velvet Eau Claire, your guide through all of the secrets, sexy, sassy, and sometimes not so sexy or sassy of us, the ladies and gentlemen behind the tassels. I am thrilled that you press play today. Again, as always, I'm always thrilled. I probably come across very happy. I promise I'm not one of those people who's just like giddy all the time. But doing these episodes and talking with you and hearing from you really, really does bring out the little giddy girl in me. So I thank you for that. I thank you for listening. I thank you for getting in touch with me. It really means a lot when I know that I'm not just kind of speaking into the void. So I really love any emails that come in, any voicemails and iTunes reviews, everything like that really, really means a lot to me. So thank you for all of that. I'm really excited because today I have an episode that's actually was recorded about 2 months ago. I mean, you will hear we're actually talking just a few days after we all found out that Prince passed away. And for those of you that know me, you know that that really hit me in a very deep personal place. And so we chat a little bit about that, but it's kind of funny because it was quite a while ago now. This is what happens kind of when you start recording a bunch at one time, and then I also took a little break in there as well. So it is a little bit dated, but luckily, Professor Pinkerton Xyloma, who is my guest today, his exciting work that he does is a monthly thing. So you can be sure that it is still going on every month, the first Fridays of every month up in Milwaukee. For those of you who aren't from Wisconsin, that's Milwaukee, but we all say Milwaukee. So I really enjoyed talking with Pinky, Professor Pinkerton Xyloma. It was really interesting it's always interesting when you get to chat with someone who just has a really like different background and different kind of approach, but yet you still can connect in this way. It was really fantastic. He and I were of similar ages. We, both had this kind of Midwestern background to our lives. And yet, we've kind of taken different approaches to life and everything. And yet life kind of brought us back in the same realm. And so I just find it really, really interesting to hear kind of where he comes from and what he's doing with the Dead Man's Carnival. One of my favorite things is his real approach to things and our discussion about some of the low points throughout his career and some of the difficulties he's had dealing with some criticism. But I just really love the way he's really able to, from a genuine perspective, examine himself, examine his life, examine the show they have going on and think about those things and analyze and try to make it better. And so anyway, you'll hear what I'm referring to, in the episode. And I just was very impressed with how he approaches his work. So it was really a pleasure to get to talk to him. Even if it was 2 months ago, I'm still very much excited to be sharing this with you today. Let me tell you a little bit about at least the Dead Man's Carnival, which is the show that he runs up in Milwaukee. Dead Man's Carnival is a Milwaukee-based live music variety show. It combines their love for the turn-of-the-century vaudeville with the uncompromising passion of the do-it-yourself underground punk rock community. It acts as more than just an evening of entertainment. They create a time and place for unusual displays that would otherwise have no place to bloom. The show is presented in a format that emphasizes crowd interaction, improvisation, and intergroup collaboration. With rotating cast of dozens of performers from all over the country, they are writing the next chapter in Wisconsin's long circus legacy. It's one of the last places in the world where you can partake in a real-deal vaudeville experience. I just think it sounds like so much fun. I've watched a bunch of videos. I've seen pictures. I've talked to Ali Boubois, who has also actually performed at Dead Man's Carnival, and it just looks like a blast. And I'm really looking forward to someday getting back up to Milwaukee to at least be able to go to the show and experience it all for myself. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my interview with Professor Pinkerton Xyloma, also known as Pinky. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. I have Professor Pinkerton Xyloma here today, and I'm really excited to kind of talk about some different aspects of burlesque, from a different perspective a little bit. Obviously, we'll have a male perspective as well as kind of that production. So welcome, Professor, or Pinkerton, or Xyloma, whichever one we like to go by. How are you doing today?
Oh, much appreciated. Yes, it can be a mouthful sometimes, which is just the first of many double entendres I plan to put into this show.
I love it. Any double entendres are more than welcome, of course. So your day going okay so far?
Oh, it's excellent. Yes, it's we're taking a brief intermission for movie time, but my daughter has the day off from school, so she's in the background somewhere, being a part of the thriving burlesque scene as well.
It's a family thing. No, maybe not all the
One
shows,
of,
but see,
well,
it's a family endeavor,
well,
right?
one of my proudest and most awkward moments was when she was very young. We were like at home crafting pasties to like fill up the merch booth with, and she really wanted to make her own pasties. I was like, okay, this is a good thing. Go ahead, make your own pasties. So we taught her how to make pasties, and she was very excited. We have a split custody situation, so our mom came over to pick her up, and she's like, Mom, look, they're pasties. They're for nipples.
I love it. It's how we approach it with children, as long as I think it's not a good thing to shelter them too much. I'm sure there's different perspectives. I don't have kids myself, so I probably shouldn't get into a tirade about this.
Well, fair enough.
But
it is just like, let's just have a good controversial launching point. The intersection of children and burlesque. But
absolutely. Say stuff to piss people off. That's always a good way to start an interview.
Well, in the circus show I run, Dead Man's Carnival, we do a lot of stuff in the community that is all ages oriented because we're not exclusively a burlesque show. We have a large emphasis on traditional variety and circus entertainment as well. But I try to include the burlesque girls in these like parades and all these other things as often as possible, whether it's like, how you have like a samba girl in a parade or something. I mean, if you got good costumes, you can do hair and makeup. You can do so much in the entertainment industry besides the more blue adult-oriented like acts. It doesn't have to just be in that little square. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very big on, body image. I mean, I think a lot of us in the burlesque world are about, kind of changing that body image. And I think the only way that we're going to do that, to really change the way us women and men as well feel about our bodies and have, to get rid of this kind of shame that's instilled in us from childhood, is to make it a little more acceptable from a young age, But there is that line, especially since a lot of burlesque is very sexual, not just nudity, but sexual nudity as well.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think one of the most redeeming qualities of neo-burlesque versus traditional burlesque is it has like this it has like a post-feministic, post-like queer liberation movement where it is like, it has a celebratory aspect to it that wasn't there before, that has the same flavor as a drag show. It's like very goofy and fun and like celebratory, so it's not necessarily, with traditional burlesque, it was more of a product being sold to men, where now it's, as I said, like a post-feministic. It's been repackaged in a way that's the voice is different, although some of at a surface level it looks similar. It stands for something different. It's been shifted symbolically in a way that's very relevant.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love what you're saying, that it's celebratory. I think that's really a good way to put it, and that's when you watch videos, when you go to shows, that is kind of typically the overarching kind of mood, the approach of it. And I think you're right, and I think that's what makes it so appealing these days.
And I myself am like, I do a little bit of everything. I juggle, I swallow swords, I do bullwhip skill shooting. It's like I play music, I host the band. I've dabbled in many art forms, but I feel like my only real contribution to the performance community is that, like, as like a unique act, like most of the tricks I do, someone has done at some point in this history of entertainment. I'm not like the best at any of them, is what I mean to say. I really like performance philosophy, the theory behind it, and like whatever the more metaphysical side of things, like, not what are you doing, but for what purpose and why? Why do you matter is basically the sort of questions I like to ask.
That's very interesting, though. I like that approach to it. I think that's a cool, kind of those inner motivations, because so much of burlesque and cabaret and, so much performance, especially alternative performance, is geared around not just creating experience for the audience, but creating some sort of transformation within ourselves. Yeah. And we've talked about that a lot. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kalita. She's a showgirl out of San Francisco.
No, I think I saw on your page that you did. I just didn't get a chance to listen to all the interviews or anything, but
Sure. Yeah. No, she does she does kind of talk about showgirl transformation, and a lot of women. That's coming up more and more frequently, women and men, as I do these interviews. I'm hearing kind of a lot of that, which is really neat.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I don't know how I was trying to connect the dots, but I guess the general thought I had was, when you produce shows or this or that, you end up, whether you choose to be or not, end up becoming like the rep or the spokesperson or the gatekeeper for all of the general population who only have a cursory interest in burlesque or steampunk or, I don't know, whatever subject it is that you're passionate about. And so you get a lot of like really crazy questions where you don't really realize how off base people are. Like people get these weird ideas of like what a show's about. Like I spent 10 years driving a school bus as a part-time job in between circus tours and stuff like this, and only retired like a year ago. And I don't know how much you know about Milwaukee, but it's one of the most racially segregated cities in the country. It's one of the most, it's a very divided, I wouldn't say it's like a very like hateful place, but it's there's a lot of racial tension and in lots of other ways as well. It's just a very little clustered up city. And the bus company I worked for is like hundreds of bus drivers. I'm one of maybe at best 4 white people who works there. But I'm always trying to convince all my coworkers to like cross this cultural boundary, because I'm like, I think it's silly, that people are not sharing art and culture and so forth with each other more often. And some people, some people would come out and some people wouldn't, but like they're like, oh, well, I don't know. I'm sure it's fun, but I'm not really into sex parties. And I'll be like, wait, what?
It's crazy. See, yeah, like you said, the misconceptions that people have.
And it's like, and sometimes it'd be like something more like, innocuous, and that's something not quite as like, I don't know exactly what they think is going to happen. But, some people did come out, and it caused some like stirring conversations at work, because we have like dudes strip as well, or they'll be like, I'll put it this way, we have a very playful environment that is very queer friendly and is like definitively like a safe space, and something that makes a point to be like trans inclusive, and all of these other sort of like nice radical politics that have like associated themselves with burlesque.
That's great.
And but you take someone who's a little more square and isn't used to being in a bohemian community, and it's like, it's really, really stretching the boundaries of their comfort zone, and hopefully for the better, as sometimes is the case, You see the boogeyman, you realize it's not quite what you thought it was, and you realize that, perhaps you need to reassess some of these assumptions you come to.
Absolutely, yeah. The unknown can be much scarier, or easier to hate, or easier to have judgments about, whatever you want to say, than the known, right? Once we know it, it's not nearly as intimidating or scary.
And so in that sense, it's like, that gives me a great sense of pride, because I really love performing. I love facilitating other performers, but in my mind, it's really just like a convoluted excuse to have a gathering of people who want to have a good time. Like, it's to me like the community aspect, the just creating a focal point as an icebreaker for a bunch of people who should probably meet is the most crucial of all of the goals. It's not about, the entertainment's there, like, when you have someone over for dinner, yes, you're going to eat, but it's really because you want to have that connection with a person,
Oh, I like that analogy. Yeah, absolutely. So do your shows, do they kind of have that kind of interactive social aspect? Is there a lot, do people hang out after the shows and do all of that as well, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have a very sort of cult-like circle, especially since, like many DIY productions, we're not taking out television or billboard ads. We survive almost entirely on word of mouth, or sort of a more DIY punk rock advertising platform. And we've had success with it, which I'm very pleased about. But we're in that weird middle ground of kind of being forced to be a legitimate business, where it's very counterintuitive after years of sort of like anarcho-activism and operating and producing shows in that world. It's very weird to work with festivals and stuff and have large budgets and have to fill out tax forms and these sort of things.
How long has Dead Man's Carnival been around?
Less than 10 years, more than 8. I couldn't say for sure, but
somewhere in that range.
Let's say 8 or 9.
Okay, so yeah, it's different from when it started, I imagine.
Absolutely, and I sort of personally got into variety entertainment in general as a young adult, because like a lot of people, I was hitchhiking, hopping trains, going in vans with a bunch of people traveling around the country that way. And I started with music. I played in numerous bands, but always found it very stifling. I felt like people were going through the motions without really thinking about why, you know, and as open-minded as you'd think a community of, like, I don't know, punk rock basement shows would be, it actually has its comfort zone as well, and people become very resentful when you start to, like, break the mold of their expectation, which I found to be very disappointing. Friends and I started staging basically like impromptu guerrilla theatrical skits in between bands, or just kind of guerrilla shows in general. Like, well, we're all here, like, why are we, like, subjecting ourselves to this, like, rigid standard of, like, expression? Or, like, I'm sure you've been to some sort of, like, show where you're, like, excited for it for weeks, and it's just a bunch of people standing still, their arms crossed, staring at a band.
Absolutely.
And so that's, you know, the horrific disappointment of experiencing that sort of pushed me and some of my friends to, like, say, what can we make of this? We have all these ingredients here, but there's nothing appetizing on the table right now.
Well, that's interesting. I like that. So when when you don't see what when things aren't turning out the way that they maybe could potentially be, or I don't want to say should be, or that you want them to be, but that kind of you have a different picture in your mind. And so how can you go about kind of creating something, or maybe not even a picture, but just that a different vibe or a different feeling? Is that kind of what you were going through?
Well, and certainly, and because it's about sharing with other people and connecting with other people, it's not about like, look at me, I want attention. It's like, it's more like trying to, when you're with a group of friends and you're like, what, look at that thing over there. You kind of have to sell them on the idea. But as soon as you get the morale going, it's like the best day of the summer, you know?
It's that creating that together. Like you said, it's not about one person. I like that. That's very cool.
And so for a lot of years, myself and some of the other people who founded the Carnival were all veteran street performers, people who were used to performing in non-traditional scenarios and being maybe like a little more gregarious, or like having a little more bravado about being willing to jump up on a table and just sort of seize the moment. And so we try to take that spirit. I mean, when we started doing the Dead Man's Carnival show, it was just, we had been doing street performing long enough that we'd become dissatisfied with that because it has limitations. You don't have very good production value. You don't, like, if you have a location, a physical facility, and you have a sound system, you have a light board, and you have all these other things, the potential for the art you're making is just that much greater. So it was so trying to do something more ambitious that had live music and captured what we would consider the spirit of turn-of-the-century, American entertainment.
Did it start kind of as this variety type performance as well, or has that kind of evolved over time?
It started out, but I mean, all of us also have like an appreciation for what I refer to as the George Carlin flavor of humor, something that has incredibly thought-provoking highbrow entertainment seamlessly blended with like the lowest lowbrow vulgarity you can imagine, but avoiding vulgarity for vulgarity's sake if possible.
That's very cool. No, I'm looking forward to someday, kind of when I go back to my home state of Wisconsin, coming back into and kind of checking out what you have going on. Is there anything, I know you have, this it's a monthly event, correct?
Yeah, we do. We produce a show at a place called the Miramar Theater on Milwaukee's east side the first Friday of every month. And then we do all sorts of other stuff, and we perform at festivals and this and this and that. But as you can imagine, the show we produce is kind of like our pet project that it gets a little more attention, and it also, they really let us get away with anything at the theater. I mean, we don't take advantage of it, but I mean...
Right. That's nice. It's good that you found a place to have that kind of freedom to do things if needed. So do you have anything specific kind of going on right now that you're really excited about, or is it just kind of continuing on with this monthly production?
Well, I always try to do more, but end up, I've always run by the philosophy that you don't need to you don't have to impose unnatural boundaries to what you should take on, because you'll find them. You just kind of, take on what you can take on, and you'll figure out pretty quickly when you've taken on too much. And I've landed in that situation a couple times in the last couple of years, this cycle of how to like get off the plateau we're on, maybe start doing more regional touring again. But when we first started, we were like a troupe. There was a core group of people, like a lot of burlesque troupes. But anyone in the theater world, in the burlesque scene, there's a large spillover, so you end up in the situation of constantly have to like redefine what you are. And over the years, we're like an event. To me, like the first Friday of each month is the Dead Man's Carnival. We perform in other scenarios, but to me, it's like, I don't know, it's like a holiday or something. It's like it's an occasion. It's not like, it doesn't have a face. It's more of an impulse. So touring becomes difficult because it's like you never know which acts you're going to have. You only have a general idea of what the framework of the show. It'll be variety acts and live music. That's what it is. But
That's all I can tell you.
but it gets difficult for you have to make a lot of compromises with what you want to take on. Say, for example, with that fly by the seat of your pants approach, on the bright side, you have like this amazing versatility and flexibility and spontaneity that when it is on is like the best type of performance imaginable. But at the same time, you're also inviting so much chaos that it's hard to ever put on like a really polished, fully cohesive idea. It is like a smorgasbord of random stuff that usually I've never seen it till the show starts. If I'm lucky, I have like a paragraph synopsis of what's going to happen.
So just out of curiosity, from kind of practical standpoint, are you the main producer? Or do you have kind of partners with that, or?
At this point, I'm the sole person, as I said, like eight years ago, and that's unfair to say. I mean, any on-taking this big requires lots of hands.
Of course,
like,
of course.
As far as like executive decision making, like I like the final say on everything.
Okay. So if it's kind of you, how do you kind of pull in or filter acts or people or things that you want to bring into the show? Do you kind of have a process for that, or do you just kind of go by your gut?
Well, I mean, I go to other shows whenever I can, whenever I'm not performing. So I scout often, and I try to bring new faces in because, I mean, I love collaboration. That's why I put my energy here instead of in my solo performing career because, like I said, the spontaneous, like you didn't know this was going to happen, magic moments is sort of what I live for. And but we've established a pretty good reputation, at least among the Midwest. So most people contact me, and I just try to find a way to plug them in eventually. We have a pretty big flood of performers that are in the rotation, as it were, I guess.
So let's back up. I mean, we heard a little bit kind of about your journey and some of the things. You've been a performer, obviously, for a very, very long time. Did you have a particular moment when you knew you kind of wanted to get into or incorporate the variety, the cabaret style, even the burlesque styles into either your solo or your production? Or was it just really just a gradual thing that happened without even realizing it?
I mean, I think that was there from the get-go. I mean, if you're looking at that, like, early mid-2000s, I mean, the neo-burlesque impulse was already starting to be in full swing. So it's like, while there was nothing happening in Milwaukee specifically, as I said, I traveled around a bunch. I had seen I've seen other shows in other cities or whatever in their infancy as well. And so it's something we sought out, and I myself do perform burlesque in a striptease meaning as well. So, I mean, there's it's kind of been there since the inception, that sort of blend of traditional circus skills, sideshow acts, sort of retro American roots music, the burlesque sort of some of the aspects of like human oddities and freak show acts that we work with as well.
Absolutely. Do you remember a particular moment? I mean, back when you used to do kind of music and everything, do you remember like going to any burlesque shows that just kind of, or cabaret shows that just kind of opened your eyes and made you realize or introduced you to that industry at all? Or was it just kind of there
Well,
back
absolutely.
then?
I think right after I became an adult, Milwaukee has a huge circus history because the Ringling Brothers used to
Absolutely
have their wintering ground in Baraboo, and for many years throughout the 80s and 90s, the Milwaukee Circus Parade was like a worldwide recognized. And in 1999, I'm almost positive it was 99, but maybe it was 2000, it came out of retirement to do like a parade for the first time in 4 years or 6 years, whatever, for budget reasons. And it was one of the first shows ever that the Grimm Brothers sideshows did, who went on to do some wonderful shows, and they worked with Slymentra Hyman from Gwar as like one of their like celebrity performers, and so at least in like a sideshow aspect of things, and that wasn't overtly burlesque oriented, but obviously having like a heavy metal celebrity, you have like this sort of overtly sexual aggressive nature to it anyway. You have people coming out dressed like dominatrixes and something that they were pushing the boundary as far as you could without it still being all ages, I suppose would be the best way to put it. So then that branched that interest, and then I saw people who were trying to create similar art, create similar moments, but a less regulated format, and that's where you get some crazy burlesque acts, some crazy like wild performance art stuff. I was like, all right, so this is the envelope, this is as far out as it goes, and I was like, this is too far for me, so I'm going to peel it back a little.
So in a general sense, who inspires you in your life or in your performance or anything? Kind of a general open question.
I've always had this sort of parallel, even when I was like playing in punk bands. I used to have this sort of default answer I'd give that I don't really want to be like a carbon copy of someone else. I don't like go like, oh God, like, oh, the Squirrel Nut Zippers, they were like the best of the weird like Dixieland revival. It's like I love them, but or Tom Waits. I don't know, like you could name like an artist that you greatly admire, but I generally will say something like, I want to do for music what Salvador Dali did for art, and I want to do for art what Wesley Willis did for music.
Ooh, there you go. No, I love it. I think that's a great, and that's why I like the word inspires, because it doesn't necessarily mean we want to emulate them or copy them or be just like them, but kind of have those inspirations, those ideas of what they did for that specific industry or for the art itself. Bring those elements into your own.
But there's a lot of shows that I've seen that I really admire, like from other producers. Like I really like a lot of the stuff Indigo Blue does out in Seattle. I think some of her interviews have been like very thought-provoking. In fact, I quote her sometimes when trying to explain what burlesque is to people, because she's pared it down sometimes very nicely. I really like a lot of the productions Lola Vanella was doing or Sammy Tramp was doing out of Chicago and St. Louis. I think the Beggars Carnival was a great show. I really admire the Yard Dogs Roadshow, although I don't think they're actively touring anymore. They were one of the higher production value shows that I saw early on. So I don't know, the list could go on and on. I really, really like the Burlesque productions that Red Rum is doing out of Chicago, who's just absolutely brilliant. You should put her on your interview list as well, because she's someone who greatly understands the high art perspective of burlesque.
Absolutely, I shall. So speaking of kind of inspiration, when you do perform, or even just, if as the host of your Dead Man's Carnival, where do you kind of find that inspiration if you are in an act creation kind of a mode? Or do you just are you more of a planner, more of a winger? How do you approach acts?
I go in and out of writing skits. I like writing group acts, although we don't necessarily even have them every single show, but when they come out, they are generally very excited, and I like the writing process as well as the directing and performing, but try not to do all at once, so I kind of go in a rotation. But I play very small of an editorial role. People say, oh, I want to do this or that, and I'll say, okay, well, we had someone do something like that last week, like, what's your presentation like? And they'll give me a description. If we're really lucky, we get a chance to meet up and actually run it, but usually I just kind of trust the performer that it's like, I'm not here to judge them, I'm here to support them and help them grow. I'll give them some like feedback afterwards about ways that it was really, really great or could it be improved, but in general I don't want the show to be through my filter that much, because no matter what act I bring out, there's always someone that doesn't like it. It's just like...
Well, that's true, yeah. You can't please everybody, right?
So it's like some people just don't like sideshow, or they don't like vulgar humor, or they don't like really clean-cut, like, cutesy stuff. And that's the beauty of the format of Dead Man's Carnival is, if there's one act you don't like, just wait 5 minutes.
Have you had to deal with any bad feedback or anything? And how do you approach that if you do get any?
Yes, and some of it is because we do try to be challenging at some point in the show. We want it to be friendly and accessible, but we also want people to have something to talk about over the breakfast cereal. So we've pushed it too far sometimes and had to come back around and say, you know what, that wasn't really what we wanted. And in this case, some of these skits we write, the stuff I write tends to be kind of out there, like in an almost like R. Crumb type flavor. Some of it's really dark, and it does have sexual aspects to it. But we did a Star Wars burlesque parody thing that more or less ended with someone being emulated, sodomized with a lightsaber. And it wasn't like, obviously, it's all insinuated or whatever. It was all just playing around. But there was a good amount of critique from some of her other performances. It's like, well, maybe somewhere in the world it is all right or acceptable. There's like a way to make a funny rape joke, but I thought that was in poor taste and it could potentially be a trigger for people and this and this and that. And I was like, that's really right. That's true, because this joke, even if some people find it funny, it's like, what is its intrinsic value? And if it's like that much of a dynamite issue, it's not like us trying to make a statement or this or that. It was a stupid, childish, sophomorish joke that some people were offended by. So it's like, so instead of doubling down and being like, well, forget you people, you shouldn't be so offended, I was like, you know what? Keeping the carnival a safe place is more important to me than whatever, one act, one joke or whatever. So, and in this case, like the person who was more taken aback by it wasn't like reprimandal with me. She was just like, listen, I love working the show, but I also work as a pediatrician, and I can't have like a YouTube video surface of like, thinking it's like lighthearted or this. And she wasn't like super offended, but you know what I mean? It's like one of these, it wasn't just some random fan. It was someone who I'm like, I really respect the art you make. So if you're telling me this is something that needs more thought, you're probably right.
See, I love that. I mean, there's so many things I love about that story, because it's like, because you are right, about keeping the priority being that it's a safe space. I love that you approach it that way. I love that, the person who had a problem with it, kind of approached in a very respectful manner. Now with the internet and social media, everybody's so quick to get angry. And I'm always just like, can't we just all just kind of respect and approach these things and bring up our issues in a grown-up way? Can't we all just be adults?
And it is, I think, one of the dynamics I find most curious in the burlesque community is because there are many people who do it professionally. It is what they do for a living, but I would say that is nowhere near the majority. So many people, this is a passion, it's a hobby, it's something that even if they do it semi-professionally, it's something that they're doing for reasons beyond money. The money's just frosting, And with that being said, the boundaries between professional and personal are very, very complicated. You're friends first and foremost, but what happens when people date or there's breakups or someone cheats on whoever with whatever? There's a lot of behind the scenes, whatever, like you're saying, they're like, inevitably these conflicts are going to come up, and I really like it when I can see that the community deals with it in a graceful manner.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, those, interpersonal dynamics are clashes are inevitable. People being on different mentalities about things, and but what's important is just to keep everything, civil and professional, not even professional, but just civil as human beings, human decency, right?
And there's just, whatever, like let's say in the burlesque community, there's so much stuff that would never fly, like in a touring circus or a professional theater world or this or that, and it's like, but since most people don't live that world, it's like that culture doesn't transcend. And some people who, this is one of the things I like about burlesque is that it's more casual, because, I do work in that other world sometimes, and I feel like they're missing the point sometimes,
Of course, with that, there's pros and cons to each, that more, the rigid structure does allow for, some different things to happen. And, that maybe there's less, problems that occur when you have those rules and different things set in place. But I mean, to come back to, the issue of offending someone, I think, props to you for being the type of person who's, able to look back and say, okay, well, maybe that was a joke and vulgarity for that sake. And maybe we can revisit that because,
and it was meant to be extreme, but it is just sort of. I mean, George Carlin is one of my large idols, someone I grew up with as a kid, which might explain why I'm so messed up. But he has this really great point in one of his stand-ups where he says, like, nothing is vulgar. It all depends on where the exaggeration lies. And, it's like some people say, you can't joke about this, you can't joke about this. He's like, and where I feel like comedy fills an essential function in society as a platform to voice things, to bring a subject up without it being political, without it, like, you can say something you mean, but say with a smile on your face. So it's like, I don't know, like, to me, I think comedy fills an essential role, and it needs to be given a lot of elbow room, and not outright complete, like, nothing is offensive, because I don't believe in extremes. Extremes are never the right answer, but in this realm, the integrity of comedy and art, it's essential that you're allowed to talk about things you're not allowed to talk about.
I agree, absolutely. So we've talked about, some kind of, I'm sure that was kind of a difficult moment to kind of navigate around for you, but has there been, because I always like to talk about the reality of burlesque and performance here on the podcast, has there been a particular moment throughout your lengthy performance career and production career that has been a real low for you, or just a real kind of moment when you weren't sure you were even in the right sphere, you weren't sure of what you were doing, you weren't sure of yourself maybe, just a particular low moment? Kind of take us to that moment for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do go through some cycles of that. And for me, it's never been like to the extreme of I just shouldn't perform at all, shouldn't create, but the pressures of producing a show, especially one as chaotic as mine, it requires a lot of sacrifice, and you never really know what you're signing up for. And it's like, between being a single father and earlier in my career also trying to balance a job that was paying the bills with having a side job doing the school bus driving, you have to sometimes ask yourself, like, if you keep finding yourself in a situation where you don't have, like, healthy boundaries of, like, when you stop putting in effort, a creative project doesn't have its own feelings. Like, it won't, like, go, oh, you look tired, okay, take a break. Like, it's like, it's like a mania. It's something that really can throw your whole life out of balance because the stress of other people depending on you, or you set your expectations, you're going to do this and this and that. And sometimes, once again, you need to have more flexibility. My sort of right-hand man, my stage manager, Ben Shaw, has this great thing he always tells me whenever he seems like I'm too stressed out. He says, just remember, we have a plan, so we have something to deviate from.
I like that. That's a great way to approach it.
It's like, it's just one of those, like, okay, maybe things will change, but at least this way we have, like, we're on the map somewhere. We know where we're at. So for me, taking on more than I can has certainly paid its toll on damaged relationships, because no one wants to feel like they're second priority to something. Or in the earlier years of producing a show, before I could find a way to balance it out more, like, there are lots of times I wasn't really being a very attentive father. It was sort of like my time with my kid was dragging around to band practices or meetings, or, not doing things, whatever. These are the sort of things that any kid in the arts is going to have some amount of subjection to. In fact, I feel it's a very enriching experience in sparing quantities.
So was there kind of a moment that you realized that some of these, things were taking their toll on some relationships and things, or was it just kind of a gradual, like, oh, this isn't working, let's flip the tables, let's, kind of gradually make those changes in your life?
Well, I think there's one very extreme example, which I ended up turning into an act as well, and it's not directly related to the circus or whatever, but so when my daughter was 5, maybe about 6, I'm going to say she was actually 6, I was on a trip with her, and we were going someplace, and unbeknown to me, she had, like, these, like, magnet earrings that she got from someone at school or something, where it's like, whatever, one side of the magnet goes on each side of your ear. And she had a friend in the back of the car, and they were, like, trying to, like, fight over who had these magnet things, and, like, she put them in her mouth and accidentally swallowed them.
Oh, no.
And this is, like, one of these, like, in the back of my head, I kind of was aware of what's happening, but I also was, like, driving and, like, thinking about other stuff, and this I was kind of like, wait, you did what? But I didn't really, like, treat it with any serious. I completely forgot about it, because it was, like, this sort of, like, I wasn't even sure if she swallowed, I didn't even know that I was like, magnets? Why would she have magnets? Like, and none of it, like, I just didn't pursue for more information. And
Right, because sometimes kids come up with these crazy stories, like they're playing around or doing whatever too. Yeah.
and so I guess long story short is like, she stayed home from school the next couple of days with like a stomach ache, and it was kind of like this, like, even she didn't really connect the dots on this. And I guess like the magnets were in like two different spots in her intestines, so they basically like pinched it together, so her stomach was basically like unable to digest food. And so her mom was like, "Oh, you need to like call in to work because, like she's been home the last 2 days, but she wasn't with me." So it's like, you get a phone call, you don't really know what to expect. And once again, it's this, I have so much going on, I don't really have time for this. And like my boss is already mad because I've taken off work so many times to play shows or stuff like this. So I was like sort of resentful and angry, like, "Oh, well, you're just letting her, she just doesn't want to go to school. She's exaggerating or something like this." So I stayed home from work a couple days, and my job is getting really mad. But, at this point, you're a couple days in, like she hasn't been eating, she's been vomiting, this or that. We'd taken her to the hospital multiple times, and they kept just blowing it off, saying it was a flu. Well, it turns out what had happened was these magnets had actually like rubbed against each other and like ripped a hole in the lining of her intestines.
Oof.
And like by the time we actually got her to the hospital and they like figured out that, once they finally gave her an x-ray, I mean, magnets don't go well with x-rays.
Oh my.
So it's like she was probably within like a day or two of it being like a fatal situation.
Oh my God.
So it's like one of these, like having to live with the sort of like knowing there were all these red flags that in post-sight I can totally see, but I was like, too
Sure,
distracted,
hindsight is 20/20, but
too busy to this. That's like, so she ended up getting surgery to like, fix the hole in her stomach. But then like it became an additionally elongated process because they like missed some of the, like one of the holes or something. So like the first time they did, like a laparoscopic surgery where they put like a camera down the throat so there wouldn't be much of an incision. But since that didn't work, they had to like give her like basically had to completely eviscerate her, put her intestines on a table, sift through it by hand, and then put it back.
oh my gosh.
So this is
Wow.
like this horrible. I mean, she seems no real worse for the wear. I mean, she has a scar on, like from her belly button, down 8 inches. But by the time she's an adult, it won't be hugely prominent because it's like, well done surgery. But, this was this like multiple week-long thing where it's probably the worst like week of my life because it's like on one level, it's like people respect that's like, oh, I have a family emergency. But on the other level, all of my other professional obligations and stuff are stacking up and like the guilt of this and that. So it's like we ended up having like our big season finale that same, like basically at the end of that week. So when she had to go back into surgery, it was kind of like the whole, like I had just gotten back to like, all right, the show's on. I just put all the wheels in motion. Like we're ready to go. All this stuff is settled. So while she was actually in her second surgery, I was at the show because there's like, I couldn't be in the surgery room. There's really nothing I could do. So like her mom was like, no, like just go do your other stuff. Like you look like a crazy person. So I put together a spoken word storytelling piece, called How I Learned How to Solve a Rubik's Cube. And the whole thing is like supposed to be about, people think of magicians or jugglers or, any of these things like unicycles. It's like supposed to be this very, I don't know, like frivolous, trivial, meaningless, banal, just like something to do to stimulate the senses or something. And for me personally, magic and music and all that things, I feel like these things saved my life. I feel like they came along at a point and that they were just something that was it was a stepping stone to like a very essential part of like personal growth and stability. So I talk about how I learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube, all these like sleepless nights where she's like just sitting there unconscious, but you still want to be there for moral support, but you can't just sit there and look at a person injured that you care about because it's like they'll drive you crazy. So I just sat there on the downtime and spent hours learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube.
Wow. Oh, I have chills. Wow. Was it I imagine it must have been difficult to be performing when you knew that she was in surgery at the same time. But I imagine that's what's great about art, right? Is that spoken word. I mean, I'm not you, I don't know, but I imagine it kind of helped you work through some of that.
Yeah, I didn't perform that piece that night because
Oh,
it's
okay,
like this is
okay.
like something I was like working
Too
on
much.
slightly later, but it was just sort of, it is sort of good to have a distraction for a couple hours
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Mm,
just to be able to do what you need to do.
mm,
And it's not like anyone would have faulted me. It's not like there's anyone who's like really putting the pressure on me, but at that point in the show, like the show really couldn't run without me there, and that was like a big
mhm.
lesson about like I started reading a bunch of general like management for dummies and like how to run your own business sort of like type books, just so I could learn the basic skills of like, okay, how do I delegate stuff? Like they were like,
Mm.
I'm not the first person who's ever come across this problem, so even though these books are like boring as boring can be, like these are like this is what divides me between every time I go to a show and I see like, oh God, it was like disorganized or this or that. It's because no one wants to learn these skills. That's not why you go into performing.
It's true.
It's like you
It's
don't
true.
like go into performing and go, I'm gonna go to the library and get a book on how to run an Excel spreadsheet. It's like,
Not the most exciting part of it, no.
however, these are the tools you need to succeed, and if you don't do it, no one will.
Absolutely. I mean, I come from a little bit, I come from kind of the online entrepreneur world. So I think I'm kind of a rare person in that I do actually, maybe not Excel spreadsheets, but I do actually get kind of a jolt. I enjoy kind of the less performance, less artistic parts. We'll put it that way.
And I
Um,
do as well. I've grown to
yeah.
really love it, but some of it is
Mhm.
still tedious, you know?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
I've embraced my inner ineffectiveness. I had to draw lines about certain things that I wanted to do it my way because it's like how I feel comfortable doing it, even though I recognize it's not the best way to do it.
Hmm.
Like when I drop set lists and stuff like this, I spend ridiculous amounts of time like changing the font size and whether this is italicized or this is underlined or this is bolded till it's like an aesthetically pleasing thing to look at.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the juxtaposition of emails and like these things or whatever, something I take a
Hmm.
weirdly neurotic pride in, and it's just one of those like I like seeing the information in a certain way, and it's
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very similar. I like that. I like those kind of things. And one thing I've had to kind of incorporate, and I actually have it on a quote up on my wall, is that perfection is the enemy of progress. No. So
yes it
that's something
is.
for me is because I will sit there on a Word document and I'll be like, okay, but I want this italicized, but I don't
Yeah.
know, but maybe I want this a little bit off to the left, like
Well,
all this stuff. And I'll sit there for hours. Like, just let it go, Velvet. Just let it go.
and that's what you need to kind of train yourself to do. So it's like for me, I have this like checks and balance system of say, okay, I'll do this, but then you need to do this and this and this and this the smart way.
Right.
Sort of like
Absolutely.
give yourself a little bit of leeway to say, I'm getting the work done. Give me a break.
Absolutely. And finding what works for you. Because I mean, obviously, I have a podcast. I'm obsessed with podcasts. I listen to a lot. And I feel like every other one is about telling me the newest productivity hack that's going to make my life easier. And it gets to a point where I'm like, look, that may save me time, but it's not for me. I'm not going to do that in that way. It's not going to work for me. So there's no right answer. There's
It,
no like, here, this is how it's going to work.
well,
Taking what works for you.
it's also like esoteric as well. Like that's like if you want to look at it like that's not like a surface. That's not like like getting someone who's like a full-time bodybuilder telling you like little tweaks and twists to get like absolute maximum efficiency. We're talking about people who just need to get to the gym. It's like
Yes.
it's
It's all
like if
relative.
you go, you win. You get an award. Go get ice cream. You just succeeded at your life today. It's
Yeah.
like yes, if you want to be the world champion, organizer of office efficiency, like there are people who want to have that conversation. They're specialists, and you can't let those people convince you that you failed because you didn't do it their way. Or I mean, that's not their goal, but sometimes that's the
Yeah.
result.
Well, isn't it true? It's like that's the like kind of the blessing and the curse of the internet is that we have so much information readily available to us, and yet so much of it is not tailored towards us, is not really meant for us, not going to help us. So it's really important to be kind of picky. Both, I mean, online and offline, of course, but just thinking about that with, with the openness of the internet, we can access anything, and knowing what works for you, and knowing to be discerning when you're looking at those kind of things.
Well, and I have like certain people that I find to be very motivating. Like, I mean, when I used to hitchhike and hop trains a lot, I listened a lot to like Henry Rollins' spoken word, because that's just like what I had on a cassette tape. And there's many things that he's an enigma to me. There's things I like about him, things I don't like, but I really like his drive. I mean, he's like an insane workaholic, but he just has this very like, it's as simple as this: you do it or you don't. Like, you either like get on the train or you don't. You pick up the weights or you don't. It's like very Yoda, do or do not.
I was just gonna say that.
But it's like much more like macho too, because it's kind of like, But he has this wonderful perspective that resonates a lot with me, that has this like very existential, like the type of existentialism that like is like embrace life, live it to its fullest, as opposed to life has no meaning, and like that sort of school of French existentialism. But but so he embraces that sort of like, I don't even know why I'm doing stuff, but all I know is like I have this opportunity, and it's like every second is precious to me. And he's like, he obsesses over like making the most out of things in a way that I resonate with, but is also my Achilles heel.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of brings us back around to that inspiration question too, right? We find these things in these people that not necessarily that we want to emulate. We don't love everything about them. I mean, of course, as we're recording this, we just found out a few days ago that Prince passed away, and Prince was a huge, I cried. It was only the second celebrity I've ever cried about. Huge inspiration for me, huge thing. But then at the same time, I didn't love everything that he did. Not everything resonated with me.
And absolutely. And I have a number of like first degree separation Prince anecdotes that did not shine him in a very flattering light.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's Prince songs I love, but I'm not a big fan of pop music, so it's like, for me, I love him as a pop icon, but his music never really like emotionally attached to me the same way like Mississippi John Hurt did, or some like, old rural blues singer.
Sure.
However, and this is very similar to parallel with David Bowie, who was also an extraordinary, like, just giant of a pop icon and performer who I have a very similar feeling for personally. Like, I love listening to their interviews, but the music just doesn't resonate with me as deep as it does many of my close friends.
Absolutely.
However, it is kind of this, I will give Prince credit that he has the best memes out of all of the recent celebrity deaths.
That's true.
Mean, like, I've like laughed, cried, because it's like, there's a weird thing where even someone like myself, who never was like a diehard Prince fan, like I'd see him, but I wouldn't like pay for a ticket. Let's put it that way.
Right. Sure.
I still was hugely emotionally moved because I could still feel his absence. Like, it's like I'd see like people post a video and I'd watch it and be like, man, he's a really great player and this and that. And you do get really upset because he was so young, and he's like, there aren't other artists like him. There just aren't. I mean, he's one of a kind.
He did so much, and so that, and like I appreciate that coming from you, because I know, his music, it resonated with me a lot. I love his music, but it's not for everyone. It's not everyone's style. That's how I felt about David Bowie as well. Not particularly my favorite like music, but I can appreciate what they've contributed to the music industry, to the art industry, to the world as a whole. It's
like, and they have so many elements. It's like they're combined. They're not just musicians. They have great fashion sense. Like they have great. Like they have like a personality in the sense that like they actually have political stances. They're not.
Oh, I imagine that. Yeah.
Not overtly, but they're thinking people's music, and you don't get that a lot in pop music.
It's true.
So there's not a value that they emphasize, so it's not cultivated. It's like when someone,
especially modern pop music,
it's like when someone gets through the filter, it's like just because they had some other virtue that was good enough. It's And
I know for me, I put this on, when I kind of had to write something on Facebook about Prince's death and everything. And for me, his music came to me, it had already been out there, but it came to me when I was some of it did, when I was like a teenager. And it really, especially because of his approach to sexuality and sex in general, not just sexuality, but just that raw, that sex, and his approach to women, it really I hadn't realized it until I started reflecting on it over the last few days, how much it shaped who I am and made me change the way I thought about myself, about my body, about all of these things, and you don't get that with every artist. That was unique.
And it is so rare that people who have these attributes get any sort of like mass recognition.
Yes.
Yes. And it's like, I'm totally fine living under the radar of society and kind of having like our little underground cavern cult-like society, but there is something very, very rewarding about the validization that comes along with, Freddie Mercury is another excellent example of someone who showed that you can have femininity and masculinity balanced out. Like, you can have attributes of both of these, and this isn't this rigid, set in stone, the fact that he can be so massively commercially successful while still making music videos of him in drag is like, it's like mind blowing. It's like, how is this jock jams at this point? Like the irony is like so ridiculous.
It's true for a society that, is typically so, especially we shut those kind of things down. We regulate them to, like you said, the basements and kind of this underground society. And so it's amazing when one of them gets through, And
that's where like Bowie and Prince play this huge role, because they were spearheads of that whole like 80s androgynous sort of. And it's like, you look at the Charlie Murphy true story or whatever, he breaks it down. It's like, well, all the dudes were just dressing like chicks then, because that's like, they had such a cultural influence that people who didn't get it had to get it if they didn't want to be left out.
True.
And that's the sort of massive sweep of cultural refocusing we need to, some people will just never get it. Like, they'll never understand. So there needs to be some like societal force that says, well, you don't have to get it. Like, we don't need your permission for equality. That's just like not a contingency that we're willing to deal with.
Do you think that's kind of the direction that we're heading?
I feel such a huge swell of pride for the little victories we have in like our lifetime. I'm 34, so it's like, pre-millennial, I'm in like that pocket people want to keep writing articles about,
Right, yeah.
And first off, gay marriage is legal in most of the world now. Like, if you told me that was going to happen in my lifetime, I would have told you you're a fucking liar. Like, it's just like there's like no way, and like that's never been an issue for me. Like I grew up in a family that had many, many like gay and lesbian people in our social group, and it was like never a thing. They weren't tokenized. It was just like, that wasn't an issue. So it's like, for me, I was fortunate to grow up in a household that wasn't seeded with like prejudice and miscommunication and sort of like hate. Yeah, it's just like in my life, it's just like crazy to think about that. And also growing up like in a punk rock community, which in some pockets, particularly traditionally in the 80s and 70s, was a safe place for queer culture in general. That's like, just something that I've always been like, yes, this is the side of the fence I'm on. So to feel other people coming around in mass is like, just, I don't know, to me it's like, if that were the only accomplishment of our whole generation, I still feel like it's like, we have something to be proud of. And the same line, it's like, I'm vegan and have been pretty much my entire adult life. And so it's like all these sort of like things that cultivated themselves in a very underground fashion have become like massively acceptable. It's not like, I'm not saying everyone should be vegan, just like I'm not saying everyone should be gay. However, there's a like considerable population who are interested in, and they just want to be allowed to exist. They're not, we're not, I've never been on the debate team or whatever. And as a result, maybe some people will be more openly experimental, but it's not like it's going to change their, it's not going to like change their mind,
Right. And if we can all just kind of cultivate this kind of open-mindedness, and to me, that's what I'm hoping, although, current evidence to the contrary with this whole Donald Trump thing, but it seemed like we were kind of heading in the direction of more openness.
Well, and it seems like we're finally getting more of a foothold. As I insinuated earlier, I come from a very like far left anarcho background, like traditionally speaking. I don't even call myself an anarchist. I just say like I'm influenced by lots of anarchist thinkers, because I'm not a full-fledged Kool-Aid drinker either.
Fair enough.
So for me, it's like I've always kind of been cynical and sort of anti-authoritarian, anti-government in general, but there's something really beautiful about that can even make someone like myself like patriotic, to be like, wow, like if America actually stood for what it says it stood for, I would be a patriot. If we really were like using all of our power and wealth and influence for equality and justice and inclusiveness, absolutely, I'd be full on board. Like I'd have a American Eagle tattooed across my face. It's like
I'd like to see that. That would be great.
We do have lots of tattooed face performers. I mean, from being an old anarcho train hopper, many of my sideshow friends probably still would fit under the crust punk umbrella somewhere. Which is weird, because you add that, you get like burlesque girls who are like trying to be glamorous, and you get like a dude who looks like he rolled out of a gutter.
Well, that's what sounds cool about, what you've created there, is that juxtaposition, that really, kind of everything, that real, true variety type
I
of
try
show.
to say that I want my shows to be as diverse as Gwar shows, because I've never seen a show that has like a wider demographic than a Gwar show. It's like, it's just the universal love of giant tentacle penises raining fake sperm on everything.
Gosh, it's amazing.
It's like I can think of nothing I would like less than a giant alien dick like hosing me down. However, the appeal is there.
Indeed. That does not sound the most appealing, and yet strangely appealing at the same time. Interesting. So, I mean, of course, I could sit here and especially with Prince, and then as far as politics and stuff, we could talk all day about that, I think. But let's kind of start to kind of move towards the quickfire challenges that I like to do.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Real quick, I have one quick question. If you had to put it in a nutshell, what is your biggest challenge right now as a performer or as a producer, whether it's on stage, off stage, anything like that?
Prompt communication.
From other performers?
Both sides, unfortunately.
Yes. That's understandable. It's hard. It's funny how the internet and text messaging has allowed for instant communication, and yet at the same time, it's allowed us to not do that.
It lets you glance at your phone and then see that you got something and then forget about it. So it's like, I'm die-hard paper notebook. I write stuff down, call this person back, email this person.
I'm the same, because I will forget. I think even when you and I were communicating, I had forgotten at one point. I thought I emailed you back, and then I didn't. It's just it's tough to keep up with.
It's a sign of the times.
Indeed. Our minds become more kind of busier, and yeah, it's difficult. So what is one thing that you always have kind of in your backstage kit when you are getting ready for a show or that monthly Dead Man's Carnival?
Well, I have like a suitcase I use for like festivals and roaming corporate work and stuff like this. That's like a combination of sideshow and magic tricks. Just a little briefcase on a stand that I could do 2 hours entertainment out of if I needed to, because that's what I do in my like real job, So I always have that. I have stories. It's like, for me, I always need like to stretch or stall or something at some point in a show, so I don't even write myself into the set list anymore. I'm like, if it happens, I will be doing a card trick at this act.
Just ready to be flexible. All right, this next little section is something I like to call Pick Your Poison. Basically, I have 9 different questions, but I only need you to pick one of them. And these are not even related to performance or anything in general. These are just for us to get to know you a little bit better. So just go ahead and pick any number 1 through 9.
Ooh, I like the randomness of this. This appeals to my magician-like nature.
Completely random. There's no illusion here. This is just completely random.
I'll go with 4.
Number 4. All right. If you were stranded on a desert island, or somebody corrected me actually once and said maybe it's a tropical island, not the completely desert.
Oh, okay, I got you.
What 3 things would you have with you?
Oh, I'd have to have some sort of musical instrument. I feel like if I don't have shelter, a piano is going to be no good.
True.
I could go with a guitar, but I'd be terrified that it would break a string. The same thing. I feel like I'd have to have like a trumpet, I guess, and I'm horrible at trumpet, but at least, no, because if you don't, this is a problem, instruments all require upkeep. Like, you break a string, you need like lubrication for the valves on the trumpet, you need reeds for I guess if they have bamboo, I can make my own reeds. I'm just going to go with piano anyway. I'm going to go with piano.
Play a flute, right? Flutes don't need much upkeep, do they?
You're right. You're right. Actually, yeah. Like especially like
That's the only one I can think
a
of,
pan
or a
stuff.
drum.
So some sort of musical instrument would just be like essential for my sanity's sake. Preferably a piano, but maybe is it fair to say like companionship? Could I have someone there with me? I'm stranded alone.
I guess I'll allow it. That could be a thing.
Some,
Companionship.
Some sort of companionship, and then some sort of way to know how to survive on an island, like a book. I don't know, like how to survive on a deserted tropical, maybe desert island for dummies.
Yeah, for dummies. I like that.
It's like I'm pretty easy to please. It's like I'm very social. I think I would like be one of those people who die of isolation.
You would be the one if you were alone. You would definitely be creating Wilson, just like Tom Hanks in Castaway. Yeah. Somebody to talk to. Yeah.
No, I let my daughter watch that movie, and she still contests to this day, despite seeing a number of movies that maybe she's not old enough for. She thinks that's the most terrifying movie she's ever seen.
Really?
And it's like, I didn't think much of it. I just got it for Christmas one year and never watched it. So once the hype was about, so we watched it together, and I was like, okay, yeah, but then I thought about it, I was like, yeah, like there's the plane crash scene, which is horrifically terrifying. There's the scene where he cuts his foot open, and that's like terrible.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then before he knocks his tooth out with an ice skate, like I was like, for a child, this is like worse than a horror movie.
That's true. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Let alone like to a child, the idea of isolation must be like the most terrifying of all things possible.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. So note to self: don't let my kid watch that movie. Fair enough. If I ever have.
Don't let yourself watch it. It's like gonna affect you deep down inside somewhere.
Yeah, it's like this stays with you. All right. Next up, we do this is the real quick fire one. It's just a this or that, and I have just a series of either or questions, and you can just pick the one that appeals to you the most. And I also let all of my guests know that you can interpret these in any way you like.
That's exciting.
There's no real interpretation for them. So take them in any way you choose. Are you ready?
I just want to say that I find this to be very exciting because it's like doing one of those Facebook surveys, but I know you're not mining my account for information.
Exactly, right. I'm not going to keep this and show you targeted ads in the future or anything like that. All right, let's get this going. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Oh, God, that hurts. Starbucks.
City or country?
Oh, city, definitely.
Love or money?
Oh, absolutely love.
I'm just waiting for the first person to say money out of this.
That's like, I have plenty of love. I could use the money.
That is true. Yeah, if we're talking about commodities here. For the burlesque-ness of it, Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini?
Ooh, I can go Dirty Martini.
How about a dirty martini or a pint of beer?
I'm straight edge. Can I opt that one out?
Fair enough. All right, no problem.
No, I'll go with beer. I'll go with beer just because, like, symbolically, it still could be interpreted that way.
Okay, all right, I like that. Day or night?
Night.
Harry Potter or Star Wars?
The conflict. I'm gonna go with Harry Potter.
Okay. Top or bottom?
Top.
Mountains or ocean?
Ocean.
Ocean. Classic or neo-burlesque?
Classic.
Okay. Peanut butter or jelly?
Oh, peanut butter.
Comedy or tragedy?
Oh, wow. Comedy.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Sleep or sex?
Based on habit, sex.
Fair enough. How about heels or bare feet?
I have bare feet.
There we go. And lastly, because of course I got into burlesque and my troupe is back in Paris, I will ask you Paris or Milwaukee?
Paris in the sense that I've never been there but almost went.
There you go. All right. It's a lovely city. If you get a chance to go, it's very, very nice. Lots of good, it's of course has more of a classical burlesque roots to it and everything. But there are, there's more and more kind of cabaret and variety shows that are kind of coming into the underground there. It's great.
Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. All right. The pressure's off now. We did our quick fire. Whew. That was exciting.
It was. Yeah, this is good. And obviously, some of them are like the heels or are barefoot as it's like, this is a really revealing question.
Indeed, yeah, it tells us a little bit more about you. Yeah, of course, you could interpret it as far as like, what you like on
Oh
on
yeah,
others as
oh,
well.
absolutely, absolutely. I feel like, yeah, this is true too. And but I still would stick with bare feet probably. I mean,
There we go.
I have complete respect for the anomaly that is women's like fetish with shoes, but I totally don't get it.
Oh, yeah, I have this. Yeah, it really is like I don't know, it's a love-hate for me. I love the way they look, but man, they just hurt my feet. I just can't. I watch like Sex and the City. I don't watch Sex and the City that often, but if I did watch Sex and the City, I'm like, they wear heels like all day, every day, and I just don't understand.
You know
Like the
what?
best part of my day is taking my heels off
Well,
if I wear them.
interestingly enough, historically, heels came into fashion in Rome for men. It could be
I
like,
heard.
so it's like, it was like a different deal. It wasn't like a stiletto, but it's still, it's I've said on many occasions that some of these performers walking up and down these stairs is the best circus balancing act I've ever seen.
Yeah. All right, so before we say goodbye, I'd love to hear, I say this to everybody, like the internet is a huge place and it can be really difficult, and the world is a huge place as well to kind of keep up with things. There's so many things going on in different areas. How do you typically stay current in kind of like the performing news in the industry?
Oftentimes, unfortunately, I default to what pops up in my Facebook feed.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a necessary evil of the industry at this point, and as a result, I'll see people post interviews or this, like I'll go check out a website for a festival or whatever. But generally, it's word of mouth or Facebook.
No, it's great to have. I mean, Facebook, it's this monolith, and it just tends to be where kind of everybody goes. It's like the new news source these days. It's
But
truly a news feed for a reason.
but it's like it's so hard too with theater and burlesque because it's like even if you get someone like post their whole video of their act or something like this, it's like it's always meant to be experienced live. It's like
Absolutely.
through that filter, it's like a shadow of what it should be. It's like about the excitement and like the anticipation and like the whole moment and being a part of this crowd who's all experiencing this art at the same time. So I try really hard not to, I don't know, like scout performers that way because you get like, I don't know, like a lower expectation. You're like, oh, I guess that was okay, as opposed to like if you've been there live, you might be like,
Yeah.
heart pumping, like, oh, this is so exciting.
It's true. It absolutely is not the same. And I've had that even as a performer myself. I watch videos of my performances and I just hate them. I hate them all.
So I try
And
so
yet I get great feedback from them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there must be something that's not translating here.
Yeah, and so I try so hard to do almost all of my recruiting, like by just going to other events, talking to people, and that's why a lot of the performers I work with are like just friends of a friend. I ask people, I say, hey, do you work with anyone that like was doing anything really fun recently? And I get references that way, and that's like my prime way to stay in tune is word of mouth.
It's a great way to do it. So, I mean, we talked about how horrible videos can be, but at the same time, do you have any YouTube videos? I always like to ask for something to kind of put
Yes.
in to let people know. Do you have anything that you really like to watch, or any of your Dead Man's Carnival as well?
I have thousands and hours because we like tape like every carnival show, and I've just never watched any of it. Like, I mean, I will eventually. We're archiving it for the purposes of this or that. A lot of it's just not great quality either, so I just don't know what to do with it, and it's become like the attic that's all messed up. It's like one of these days, but it's going to be like all day.
So do you have any, just a few up on like, are there things up on YouTube at the moment at all?
We do have some videos up on YouTube. I don't personally take care of it, so it's like I think if you just search Dead Man's Carnival, most of it's going to be like cell phone videos or something like this, but it's like somewhere in the mix of all that, there are actually like a few nice professional videos.
Okay.
We really do live very happily in our little like under the radar world because we fill the theater every time, and we have like so we don't really put much effort into corralling people to choose to check us out. It's we should, but we don't.
No, I mean, well, if you're getting sold out, if it's getting good feedback, if it's getting good, not press, but word of mouth kind of, then I mean, that's what's most important. There's no shoulds. There's no shoulds in life. Do your thing.
Well, but I think 10 years from now, like I will feel regretful that Like it wasn't, like captured better. But I'm not even like, I don't even usually take pictures when I'm on vacation. It's just like not an impulse that I have well developed.
Well, that's another, we could kind of go on another existential kind of a tangent here as well, because I've always been very much a picture taker, a documenter, and all of that. And in recent years, I've kind of gotten away from that, partially because I just don't think about it as much, even though I have a phone now that actually works and is with me all the time.
And that's the only reason. The only reason I take pictures now is because it's like, okay, I'll take a picture. My daughter's holding the kitten. Okay, let's take the picture.
Right. But at the same time, I'm starting to kind of change my approach to things, where it's more important to live in the moment than it is to live in the past. And even looking at pictures is kind of taking me back to that and making me, nostalgia is a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
So
the only thing that's consistently kept up, like if you want to see what's going on at the Carnival, would be we have like a Facebook group page.
Okay.
And we have a business page that Facebook won't let me erase. So it's like, it confuses people sometimes, but there's a group that you can join.
Oh, okay.
And that's like, most of it is relevant. Sometimes people just post interesting historic pictures of sideshow performers or stuff like this. There's a little bit of a community aspect to it, but most of it, if you want to know what's happening when we got shows, when we're doing your city or whatever, that's where the only consistent place it will be.
Okay, that's good to know. So I will put that for anybody listening, of course, as always, the show notes for this episode, including everything that we kind of talked about, all those inspirations and things like that. Those are going to be over at the website, burlesquestripdown.com/Pinkerton, Pinkerton. Correct? I got it, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's going to be over there on that website. And that's where I'll kind of, I might go and see if I can find a cool video to put up of the Dead Man's Carnival so that you can check out. And then I will also have that link to the Facebook as well, because that's the best way to get to kind of keep up with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, is the only thing that is constantly on my radar.
Well, it's true. Facebook groups are actually one of the best ways, as far as like the, the analytics and the algorithms and things like that. They are really one of the best ways to kind of keep up with your community. So,
yeah, I was just going to put, the open call out as well. I mean, we perform with, we've had people from all over the world come out and do guest spots or whatever, but we sort of, always like new faces. Primarily, we work with Midwest performers mostly just because for it to make sense on like just a schematical budgeting level, but
sure,
whatever the case is, anyone who sounds like they want to come out and do an act with a bunch of crazy carnies.
I love it. That sounds fantastic. Well, I know you had, the whole initial contact between you and I was made through Allie Boubois, right?
Yes.
From the Distress Dolls. So she performed with you guys, was it a couple times or just once now?
She used to live in Milwaukee, and I don't know if she even was performing burlesque then.
Okay.
But she's one of those people, like, we were aware each other existed, we're acquainted, we probably talked face to face at some point. But despite having so much overlapping interest, didn't really get to know each other till she moved out of state. So then
always the way.
We brought her and her partner up, and they both did like a duet, and then she did a solo as well, and it was very nice. It was good to connect those dots.
So great. So if anybody's interested in kind of getting involved, maybe performing or even just coming to the show, the Facebook group is the best place to do that. So
Absolutely.
We'll link that up.
And they can feel free to email me directly if it's an actual performer, pinkertonx@gmail.com, X as in xylophone.
Okay, perfect. Great. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. Well, Professor Pinkerton Xyloma, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really great to talk, and I'm glad I got to kind of get some of my Prince, sadness out of there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of those things I don't think the full effects will be known for. It's going to be like Robin Williams. They're still talking about it. It still is referenced.
Absolutely. I still can't quite believe it. Even Robin Williams is gone. I just forget,
Absolutely, yeah. It's like he's been there. Such a huge, he took up a lot of space in the collective conscious.
He did. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was really good getting to know you a little bit better, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Likewise. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you got as much out of that amazing episode as I did. I really enjoyed being able to chat about our respective histories and our approaches to the world and hearing what he has, a different perspective. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's not only is it a male perspective, but from a kind of more of the vaudeville, background as well as a production background and kind of that improvisation background as well. It's just really, really interesting to hear from other performers and other types of people. So thank you again, Pinky, for coming on. Anybody who's interested can get in touch with him. Apparently the Facebook group is the best way to do so, or performers can email him pinkertonx@gmail.com. Speaking of email, definitely send me an email because as I mentioned earlier and in last week's Hot Tips episode, this episode here kind of finishes out and empties out my stash of pre-recorded episodes. So I will now be starting to record new episode, making a couple small tweaks and changes that I've been teasing a little bit. And I would really love to get more people from around the world, from different areas, different experience levels. I don't always need just, the people who have been doing it for 10s and 20s of years, but anybody who's interested in coming on and discussing their experiences as a burlesque performer, I would really love to chat with you. So don't hesitate. If you are someone or if you know someone who would like to come on the show, please don't hesitate to email me, velvet@burlesquestripdown.com. I'd also love to hear any feedback you have, as always, on all of these episodes, on our format, everything that you like, that you dislike, that you think could be done better. Emails, iTunes reviews, voicemails from the website on the right-hand side of the website, liking our Facebook page, Burlesque Stripped Down, Twitter, Velvet Eau Claire, Instagram, Velvet Eau Claire. I am still have it in my head. I should actually probably listen to my goal-setting episode from Thursday to really work on this, but I still want to start periscoping pretty soon, so if you're a Periscope user, definitely let me know that you're out there so that I know I wouldn't be just speaking to no one. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay curious about the world, stay weird, because we need more weirdness out there in the world. And once you do those things, you won't even have to work at it, and you'll automatically be staying sexy.